Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports here for our daily news roundup. Going straight in though today with the first article, some really horrible words from Helmut Marko. Going here saying, completely offended and disgusted. Formula One world fumes over Helmut Marko's alleged racial remarks against Sergio Perez in the latest Red Bull standoff. Sergio Perez is inarguably one of the most talented Formula One drivers on the grid, having raced with the elites, including Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, and Fernando Alonso. Despite spending the majority of his career in a midfield team, the Mexican managed to secure numerous podium finishes for his team, subsequently gaining his hard-earned seat at the title-contending Red Bull outfit. While Perez was quite comfortable surrounded by the abundant support of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko during the initial stages, things started taking a turn for the worst, when the 33-year-old stepped further into the journey with Milton Keynes' outfit. Then arrived the 2023 season, which, despite the glorious start, shaped up to be one of the most heartbreaking years for the six-time Grand Prix winner. Victories and hope of challenging the title faded away almost abruptly, leaving Perez with almost nothing to look forward to. His performances began to tumble and results weren't as promising anymore, which somehow triggered a bitter standoff between the Mexican and the rest of the team. Recently, Perez revealed that the team had stopped developing the car towards his comfort and rather focused on building it around Verstappen's. Soon after, Verstappen rubbished that claim. But it was indeed Helmut Marko who made it to the headlines after making racial statements against his own driver. While the Austrian was indeed lauding Perez's efforts at Monza, a mere sentence managed to blow that all out of proportion. Helmut Marko is now facing the heat of the fans after his latest comments on Sergio Perez. During an interview with Servus TV, Marko had a rather bizarre and offensive theory behind Perez's recent struggles. The Austrian went on to allege that the struggles were indeed because of his nationality. In quotes, of course, this is translated from German, so there may be some translation issues, but nonetheless, the quote speaks for itself, and it says, he is a South American, and that's why his head is not as focused as Max's or Sebastian's, he reportedly said to the media house. Unsurprisingly, Formula One fans immediately swarmed Twitter to slam the Red Bull's best talent hunter. One fan wrote, as a Latina, I feel completely offended and disgusted by what Helmut Marko has said. So, yeah, a lot of people getting really upset on Twitter, and rightfully so, because this is a really disheartening comment from Helmut Marko and something we don't necessarily want to see in this sport. Of course, it could be taken a little bit out of context in the translation from German to English, but nonetheless, it has been said by Helmut Marko, and people have become very upset about it. And whether the Red Bull team is even going to release a statement about this is unknown. In the past, they haven't released statements when Helmut Marko has said less than favourable things towards their drivers and other drivers on the Formula One grid. Overall, a disheartening statement indeed, and by the looks of it, Red Bull does not seem to be too keen on holding on to the Mexican star beyond the end of next season. Hence, with Liam Lawson on standby and Daniel Ricciardo, could the Milton Keynes outfit seek a quick resolution to the ever-growing confusion? But, wait for that to stop. But more importantly, could Helmut Marko find himself in trouble yet again amidst his recent statements? Only time will tell. Yes, well, we don't want to see statements made like this in Formula One, especially against a driver's nationality, when it's super absurd like this, saying that Sergio Perez isn't, well, let me go back to that statement. He is a South American, and that's why his head is not as focused as Max or Sebastian's. It's completely absurd. I mean, we've had South American drivers. Well, firstly, Sergio Perez isn't South American. He's North American. He's from Mexico. Secondly, we've had South American drivers in the past. We've had Ayrton Senna, one of the sport's greatest drivers. And I think he's certainly proven that just because you're South American doesn't mean you're unfocused in terms of being a Formula One driver. So, yeah, I think Helmut Marko does need to come out and say something and address these concerns and either apologize or rectify why he said it. And yeah, I think it's completely absurd with BL saying Mexico's not in South America, it's North America. I agree with you. Yeah, completely absurd. Mark there saying, Helmut in the news for his comments again, standard. It is pretty standard nowadays. It's disappointing that we do get so many news articles about Helmut Marko speaking just absurd statements all the time in the press. Yeah. Nonetheless, let's not give too much more time to him. Focusing back on the Monza Grand Prix, a couple more articles come out in the middle of this week, just speaking about the battles and some of the pace. And yeah, let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris believes that McLaren has made a low downforce Formula 1 progress despite their Monza struggles. Lando Norris believes that his McLaren Formula 1 team has made progress on its low downforce form despite the difficult Italian Grand Prix. The Belgium Grand Prix exposed the weakness of the MCL60 at high-speed tracks, and Norris found himself unable to defend in the race on his way to 7th place. At Monza though, Norris qualified 9th and finished 8th, having been stuck behind the Williams of Alex Albon for multiple laps throughout the race. Although the final outcome was actually a place lower than at Spa, Norris felt that the car was more competitive overall, and that he could at least fight with other cars. He was quoted as saying, "I think I'm still happy. It was P8, some points, and maybe we were hoping for a touch more, but also at times we were not even expecting to be into the points, so I'm happy with it. I think it was damage limitation. At the same time, good to see the progress we made on a low downforce circuit. I know there wasn't a lot, and a bit of it is just things you have from last year and trying to optimize them for here. But we made some good improvements, and it was a raceable car, which is a good step forward. There's only one more low downforce track this season, which is Las Vegas. Norris has acknowledged that he got to know the rear end of Alex Albon's car very well after following him for multiple laps. I knew it before already very well, he said. I've been in this position a lot over the last few years. Credit to Alex. He drove a very good race. He didn't make any mistakes, which is annoying. We had a few good battles. I tried a bit, but they were too quick for us in the straights. And even with DRS, I catch maybe 2 to 3 kilometers per hour more than what he's doing, so I'm still happy. Tough though, because of the Williams, maybe not allowing us to get as many points as I think we could have achieved. But he drove a great race and limited what we could do. The pace was good, but the overtaking was too difficult. Regarding an incident at turn 1 after which he blamed Albon for pushing him off, he said, I was alongside. I think he knew I was there, so he definitely got off the brakes and sent it in a little bit harder than he normally would have. And yeah, if I tried to stay on the line for the inside of turn 2, then there would have been a crash, and we probably would have done a Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton from 2021. So yeah, I think it was fair. We raced fair. Well, they're both really good friends, and glad to see that friendship extends onto the track where they do give each other a little bit more space. And he continues to say he did as well, of course. You have to be elbows out sometimes, and he did that. He did a good race. Norris also downplayed the clash between himself and his teammate Oscar Piastri at the same corner from which both drivers emerged unscathed. I guess he was on cold tyres or something, so he just had a bit of understeer. I left enough of a gap, I think, but just impossible to see. It was very difficult to see in the mirror. Hard and cold tyres, it's not a nice combination, and I guess he just ran into my rear tyre. I think we respect each other. We give each other enough space. Unfortunate, but nothing happened. So all is okay. Yeah, glad that nothing happened for those two teammates who did have a bit of a clash there. But yeah, we don't want to see more clashes between the teammates at McLaren. Just going to ask you a little bit of a question here in our poll. Are you upset with Marko's comments? That's not live there, so you can all vote in that. So carrying on with the McLaren topic, but more specifically staying with Lando Norris, onto our next article, Christian Horner has responded to the Norris links to Red Bull. Norris has stated that he would be open to being teammates with Max Verstappen in the future. Christian Horner has also responded to the rumours linking Lando Norris with a potential move to Red Bull in the future. After joining McLaren in 2018 as a rookie, Norris is currently contracted to the team until the end of the 2025 campaign. The Briton has revealed at the Italian Grand Prix, though, that he would be open to partnering up with Max Verstappen at some point in his career. Verstappen's current contract with Red Bull, which he agreed to after winning his maiden Formula 1 title in 2021, runs until the end of 2028. Due to the length of the deal, it has been suggested that Norris would have to join Red Bull in order to drive alongside Verstappen, with whom he is known to enjoy a healthy friendship. Verstappen's current teammate Sergio Perez has a deal in place until the conclusion of the 2024 season, with the Mexican recently hinted though that he could be on the way out of the team at the end of his deal, paving the way for another driver to join Verstappen. When asked though if he would be interested in Norris's services, Horner told the media, including Racing News 365, "Look, Lando is a great driver, there's no doubt about that. You can see his potential is growing, but he's a McLaren driver. You have to respect the agreements that are in place. He's doing a great job in the sport. And of course, we have our drivers confirmed for 2024. In 2025 though, we have one seat open, and as you imagine, there's no shortage of interest in that seat. But it is a long way away at the moment. Definitely interesting to see if we will get the likes of Lando Norris in that team. We have TC in the comment section saying Red Bull will never deal with the racist issues from their team. Terrible organization. This is something we have seen in the past. We've seen a lot of comments from Helmut Marko, and I think the biggest issue is that Helmut Marko is a key figure in that team, and people can't really come out against him, which is my biggest issues. Because of course, as I say, you can't come out against your boss essentially, and when you are the boss, the team isn't going to make statements about your racial remarks, and it's very disappointing. We want to see the team coming out, either clarifying it or coming out against Helmut Marko and saying we don't agree with what he said. And I think that would be received quite well from the Formula 1 community. It's something that we need Red Bull to do eventually, because they can't just keep letting Helmut Marko get away with all of these comments and allowing him to say these absurd things in the media, and nothing ever gets said about it by the team. So I completely agree with you, TC, there. Completely going away from this now. Keeping on with Red Bull, though. Red Bull explains why the late Verstappen problem that stopped them from the fastest lap bid at the end of the Italian Grand Prix. Red Bull has explained that concerns of rising temperatures were the trigger for the squad urging Max Verstappen to slow down in the final stages of Formula 1's Italian Grand Prix. The Dutchman had opened up a solid lead towards the end of Monza. The Dutchman had opened up a solid lead towards the end of the Monza race, after biding his time early in the Grand Prix as he battled Ferrari's Carlos Sainz for the win, before he moved to the front. But his hopes of an early cruise to the flag suffered a late blow when his team came back on the radio a few laps from the checkered flag and urged him to back off and not get near a gaggle of backmarkers. The team did not specify what the problem was to Verstappen, but they urged him to lift and coast throughout the lap, which cost him several seconds, and not close in on backmarker Pierre Gasly ahead. Although the situation prompted a minor bit of drama, Red Bull Motorsports advisor Helmut Marko has admitted that there was a positive to it, in that it prevented Verstappen from taking some risks of gunning for a late last fastest lap. Quoted as saying, "It was about the temperatures. To avoid them from going up further," he explained, "we had to keep some of the temperatures within a certain window. Max was 12 seconds ahead as well, so there was no reason to push or take too many risks. On the other hand, it was also good because his fastest lap idea couldn't come up." Red Bull team principal Christian Horner said there was no immediate danger to Verstappen because of the temperatures, but the decision to slow him down was based on what would happen if he started following other cars. "He was managing some temperature issues, and we just didn't want it to take any risk," said Horner. "It was a stinking hot day, and we had a couple of temperatures that were under control, but there was a bunch of cars ahead of Pierre Gasly, and we just didn't want to run in dirty air. That's why we took it a little bit easier on the last few laps." The late issues on Verstappen's car came at the end of the race that had started with concerns about the Honda power units, following Yuki Tsunoda's retirement at the start of the race before the formation lap had even concluded. The Japanese driver's AlphaTauri had stopped on the formation lap on the run down to Parabolica, triggering an aborted start for the Italian Grand Prix. With Red Bull running the same Honda engines, there was an obvious risk of any problems. Tsunoda had, though, with his power unit, impacting the sister team, but this concern was quickly dismissed. As Marko explained, we found the cause relatively soon, and that was not something of concern for Honda. It was something specific for that car. So interesting to see, though, that the Red Bulls were struggling with temperature issues on the Italian Grand Prix, something we haven't really seen them have issues with in the past, and hopefully they won't have those issues too much longer, because we do have a lot hotter tracks coming towards us in the next few races. The Mexican Grand Prix is going to be really hot. I think the American races are going to be quite hot as well. We've also got the likes of not Saudi Arabia, but the final race, Abu Dhabi, is going to normally be quite hot. So we'll have to wait and see whether their cars do start to struggle a little bit at those higher temperature circuits. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, though, to Ferrari. Why Ferrari were able to make major gains at the Monza Grand Prix. Racing News 365 technical analyst Paolo Filicetti takes a look at what made the Ferrari SF23 so fast during the Italian Grand Prix weekend. In Formula 1, the unwritten but always respected law to obtain results to be perfect in every area, from the car design concept to trackside operations, so that the full potential of the package can be exploited. If we look back to the 2023 Italian Grand Prix at Monza, we could say this axiom helped Red Bull win its 14th race from the 14th held in the season, and Max Verstappen's 10th straight win. But Verstappen had to work very hard for this win. With it being so far from the case that Red Bull had its own way at Monza, with Ferrari on this track configuration at least, demonstrating it is the second best team behind the RB19s. Paradoxically, we could even go as far as to say that you don't need to be perfect in every situation to be successful, or at least demonstrate your competitiveness while knowing how to exploit your strengths remain crucial. This is what Ferrari managed in qualifying, with Carlos Sainz in pole and Charles Leclerc just 0.06 seconds behind, with the SF23 finding maximum aerodynamic efficiency in practice at Monza, with it being just enough to deny Verstappen pole by 0.013 seconds. It can be legitimately argued that on most tracks in this season's World Championship, this represented the real weak point of the machine, but was the only firm point of which Ferrari's hopes were based on for Monza. Ferrari boss Frédéric Vasseur even reiterated in the build-up to the Italian Grand Prix that doesn't give more points than any other races in case of victory, as he tried to manage the high Tifosi's hopes for a miracle or magic. To determine the aerodynamic setup of the SF23, the Maranello engineers started from a base of the uniqueness of Monza, a track which not only hides the flaws in terms of imperfect vehicle dynamics of the car, but requires the maximization of two factors. One of these is the full grunt from the power unit, which was achieved thanks to the adoption of fresh units across both Leclerc and Sainz's car, the fourth of the year for both drivers. The second factor, which is perhaps even more decisive, is to do with the extremes of aerodynamic tuning on the car, in order to increase speed on the long straights. This was already one of the hallmarks of the Ferrari car, with Monza the only circuit where maximum speed equals the best performance over the lap. To achieve it, a very flat rear wing was chosen, with the front wing trimmed along its entire length. On no other track would the setup for the Ferrari have been appropriate, because generating so little downforce would have led to lightning fast tyre wear as the treads overheated. The lack of downforce would have made the car slide in all directions, but at Monza this is less of a concern, with a few corners and many straights. But this must be balanced by the tough demands on engine life at Monza. The percentage of a lap that the driver's at full throttle is near 80%, comfortably the highest on the calendar, with no components spared from stresses of such demands, with the endothermic engine turbine level especially affected. See, why can I say those hard words and not any of the other really easy ones? The fresh units on both cars are provided a helpful boost. well, the fresh units on both cars provided a helpful boost. The Monza layout makes this dynamic setup on the car important, as teams want to favour floor-generated downforce over that by the wings, which generates drag. In the ground effects area, this is achieved by running as low a downforce and lower ride height as possible. The Ferrari was on the deck at Monza, triggering a particularly evident but ultimately irrelevant bout of porpoising. It became clear that the pace of the SF23 was more consistent than at most any other race in 2023. The performance differential between qualifying and the race seemed to be reduced, making the result of the first a more truthful reflection of the overall performance Leclerc and Sainz enjoyed. However, tomorrow will be another day, and in 2 weeks' time in Singapore, the Marina Bay track will be a different beast to deal with. So, very interesting to see how Ferrari were completely able to change their setups and really scrub off downforce in hopes to be able to be competitive in their Monza Grand Prix challenge. Unfortunately, they did not take the win there, but they did still get a podium with Carlos Sainz, which was very lucky, of course, because those Red Bulls were looking like they were on absolute form there in Monza. Yes, not many other comments there. I'm going to change the poll quickly. Majority of the people, 4 votes, saying that they are upset with Helmut Marko's comments, and rightfully so. Going to chat about Ferraris, though, in our next poll. Do you think Ferrari will be competitive for the remainder of the season? That's not live, so you can all vote in that as well and give your predictions about what you think Ferrari are going to be able to do throughout the rest of the season. Moving on, though, to Sainz for that Italian Grand Prix. Although they didn't get that race win, Carlos Sainz's Italian Grand Prix broke a slightly Sainz's Italian Grand Prix broke a slightly dispiriting 2023 Formula 1 record. Whilst Max Verstappen was out here changing Formula 1 history with 10 consecutive race wins. Before that, Carlos Sainz was himself beating a 2023 record. It's not one, though, that the sport should necessarily be proud of, but as a fan, it was great to see someone else leading the race for a change. Carlos Sainz started the Italian Grand Prix in pole position in front of the Tifosi, but after leading the race for 14 laps, he was eventually overtaken by Max Verstappen and his rocket ship Red Bull. Sainz finished third after a tough and challenging race from the very first lap right up to the checkered flag, and went on to enjoy his first podium in Monza as a Ferrari driver, the dream. He had never-ending pressure from Verstappen behind him for all of those 14 laps and was able to hold on to P2 in front of Sergio Perez until there were only 6 laps to go. The speed of the Red Bulls was too much in the end for the Ferraris, and he then had to battle for the last podium place against his teammate Charles Leclerc. But those 14 laps from the start of the race were actually a record for 2023, the most led by any non-Red Bull driver this year, both in any single race and overall for any driver. Here's a rundown of all the laps led so far this year. Max Verstappen has led 661 laps so far this year, with Sergio Perez leading 138. So that shows you how many the Red Bulls have led this year. To go down the rest of the list, though, there is 7 other drivers who have led a lap in Formula 1. Carlos Sainz with the most of those with 14, Charles Leclerc with 12, Lewis Hamilton with 7, George Russell with 6, Lando Norris with 5 laps led, Fernando Alonso with 3, and Oscar Piastri with just 1 lap led in 2023. Red Bull has led a total of 799 laps of a possible 847 throughout the last 14 Grand Prix weekends, not including the sprint races. That is absolutely incredible, an incredible feat for the Red Bull drivers this season, but we don't want to see that. We want to see other drivers being able to challenge for race wins and leading other races, of course. Do you think that Red Bull could go on to win every race this season? Let us know in the comment section, though. Yeah, very, very interesting. TC saying there, Ferrari up their game for Italy every year and then drops their focus when they are not racing at Monza. I completely agree with you there. The Ferraris do often just randomly find pace in Monza and then just fall off the back of it for the rest of the season. I wonder if they just decide that they're going to sacrifice a power unit there that for the rest of the season, as well as they know that they don't have the car for the entire season. They pretty much abandon the season and focus purely on Monza to keep their fans happy. I wonder if that's what they do. Yeah, maybe let me know what you think there, TC. As well as everyone else in the comment section, we have 5 of you watching alongside with us. Be sure to comment and let us know where you're watching from and let us know all of your opinions as well. Moving on to the final 2 articles though for our news show here today. Lewis Hamilton has been in the news saying the Mercedes driver is thinking about his next Formula 1 contract after 2025 and plans to be around in Formula 1 for, quoted, a while. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell were confirmed as Mercedes drivers until the end of 2025, the final year with the current Formula 1 technical regulations. Lewis Hamilton has revealed, though, that he is already thinking about his next contract after signing a deal to stay with Mercedes until the end of 2025. Hamilton, who finished 6th at the Italian Grand Prix, ended speculation regarding his future by confirming his seat at Mercedes alongside George Russell, who also put pen to paper, signing himself to the team for 2024 and 2025. The 7-time world champion, though, will be racing as a 40-year-old in the 2025 season. And the latest deals for both Mercedes drivers mean that the team have neither Hamilton nor Russell penned for 2026 when Formula 1's new regulations are introduced. The goal within those 2 years is 100% to be fighting and win a world championship. We are second in the Constructors' Championship right now, and we want to dethrone those who are at the top. I have 100% faith that we can do that, said Hamilton, when asked by Sky Sports Formula 1 about his targets. In terms of the long term, I'm thinking about my next contract, where that will look like, how long that will be. I plan to be here for a while. But it could change. I could come back next year and be like, damn it. Who knows? You never know where you are going to be in life but right now, I am very focused on staying positive every day. I know that that's not easy for everyone. Staying fit and healthy and trying to find the balance of enjoying yourself and your work balance with family life and all those sorts of things. I think I've got a pretty decent balance right now. That's enabling me to really love what I am doing. Nico Rosberg has also gone on to comment on the strange Hamilton comments about Max Verstappen. Another major talking point at Monza was Lewis Hamilton's comments to Sky Italy, where he said Max Verstappen has had weaker teammates than him. He also went on to say that Verstappen's dominance is no more impressive than when Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, and Fernando Alonso were winning. Nico Rosberg was one of the three world champion teammates Hamilton has been up against in his career and understands that the British driver's opinion. It's a bit strange. Lewis does talk about that my teammates were so much better. Where did that come from? But I don't think he has a point. Well, I do think he has a point. He has had 3 world champions as teammates, and that says a lot, doesn't it? Said Rosberg. I'm not going to talk too much about Rosberg's comments because I don't really care too much. Yeah, I mean, difficult for Lewis Hamilton at the moment. He is kind of sat in the midfield. Yeah, we don't really want to see him down there, but I think he is a little bit frustrated being stuck in the midfield and not necessarily being able to challenge with Max Verstappen. And we do see these comments coming from drivers when they are stuck in the midfield. We had it from the Red Bull drivers, and now we're seeing it from the Mercedes drivers because, of course, the tables have turned, and they're on the back foot now in Formula 1. Moving on, though, to our final article for today. Daniel Ricciardo has revealed some self-doubts after the Red Bull Formula 1 return. The Australian doubted himself when he made a return to the team that gave his breakthrough Formula 1 win. Daniel Ricciardo has described how he felt unsure of his abilities when he returned to Red Bull, having been ousted from his seat at McLaren in 2022. The Australian returned to his old team as the official third driver, which encompassed being the team's reserve on race weekends and putting in laps in the simulator. Team principal Christian Horner remarked that Ricciardo picked up habits and that the team almost didn't recognize him from previous successful years. Ricciardo spoke about the first days back with the team on the Talking Bull podcast. Obviously, my results weren't what I expected for myself, and what anybody probably expected for me. I think stepping out of that and having a bit more of time off over the summer and knowing I wasn't going to be racing this year helped. Then obviously getting back in, people were aware, and then I became aware of, oh yeah, I had lost a little bit of something internally. The first day I was unsure and probably still had some bad habits, maybe fresh from the past year, that was still there, so it took me a little bit of time to get a fresh start. Ricciardo went on to say that he felt hollow in the simulator. Ricciardo spent much of his time on simulator duties with Red Bull, alongside Simon Rennie, his former engineer, when he was at the team between 2014 and 2018. When asked about how he felt the Australian performed in the first few days, he admits it was a difficult start. It didn't necessarily click straight away in the simulator. He was just a little bit hollow in a way, and it felt like you were doubting yourself a little bit. Then we had a good day in the simulator. You just drove it naturally, like you wanted to, and it just sort of clicked. Then the confidence snowballed, and by the end of the day, you felt like he's back again. It's more like the normal Daniel Ricciardo that we were used to from the past. So great to see that Daniel Ricciardo is starting to pick up his confidence yet again. Hopefully we'll see him back in the car very soon, because of course he is out possibly until the Qatar race due to that broken metacarpal. Hopefully he gets in the car by Japan. I doubt we'll see him next weekend in Singapore, but it's a difficult road to recovery. Hopefully we don't have him taking too long to get back in that car, but yeah, we'll see what happens in terms of Daniel Ricciardo's health and his return. But that is it from me here today. Thank you very much for joining alongside with us. Please do be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more Formula 1 content from us. But nonetheless, that has been it from myself, Reece, here on Forever Motorsports. Cheers.